As we speak, there is someone watching over you. It's a best of with Liz from episode 89, Untouched by Heaven.
And while the doctors were starting the cesarean...
So are you feeling the incision? Are you feeling
Oh,
it?
yeah. I had a conversation with God, and I said, I know you can show me how to let go, letting me die. And I heard this voice that said, if you go, who will take care of the baby?
This is Touched by Heaven. Everyday encounters with God. Those moments when heaven and earth collide. And we see God. We see his hand reaching out to us, attempting to get our attention, inviting us into a closer relationship. Here we share stories of encounter with angels, divine intervention, prophetic dreams, visions, near-death experiences, big and little God incidents. I'm your host, Trapper Jack. Welcome to episode 89 of Touched by Heaven, a very interesting episode involving Liz. Liz tells us 3 stories, 2 in which she hears a voice. First time, a reassuring voice. Second time, a very wise voice. Third time, no voice, but certainly guidance from above, light through a very dark period of time. 3 great stories. I was going to bed last night. I'm going, okay, I've got 3 wonderful stories. Is there a theme? Is there a theme? Well, you see the theme, the headline in this episode, someone who will watch over me, because I woke up to that song this morning. It's a really old song, long before my time, but I know it somewhat. This version is from Ella Fitzgerald, someone who will watch over me. Familiar?
Where is the shepherd?
Where's the shepherd for this lost lamb? And she's looking for someone who will watch over me. Aren't we all looking for that shepherd? And we have that shepherd. We have that shepherd. Jesus, how many times did he call himself a shepherd? And he said things like in John 10, he mentions how my sheep know my voice and I know them and they follow me. And they'll have eternal life and they'll never perish and no one will ever be able to snatch them away from me. Is that not comforting? You a believer? You belong? No one's taking you away. You know his voice. He knows you. You're following. Stay with the flock, right? Stay with the flock. We're right here with him and we'll have eternal life and no one will be able to snatch us away. And that is so reassuring, so reassuring. And so let's get underway with Liz and her 3 stories and about hearing a voice, about contact from above, from the shepherd who sends angels, who sends saints, and sometimes he sends himself.
It's so weird seeing Trapper pop up on my contact list when you call.
Such a common name. You know. I don't know why I'm the only trapper on my block. I don't quite get that. This is Liz. She's got 3 great stories.
I was shy about it. It's taken me for a long time to write to you. And I kept thinking, I really need to just do this.
And she reminds me that God knows what we know and how he uses that. For example, Liz has been Presbyterian, but mom was Catholic, and so she's always prayed rosary throughout her days, and we've talked about the rosary a lot. It's a Bible in your pocket, right? It's not just for Catholics, it's for everybody. And the power of that rosary, and how the rosary, yes, it's a Bible in your pocket. It's about Jesus, it's about Mary. That every time you pray a Hail Mary, it's like giving Mary a rose. So by the time you're done with the whole rosary, you've got 50 roses that you have given to Mary in hopes that she is, interceding for you, taking your prayers to her son, Jesus. And we'll talk about that a little bit coming up here. But God knows that Liz knows all of that. Will he use that in the course of a day? Might. Because Liz's husband he was up for a particular job. And he was going for the interview. Is Liz going to pray a rosary for the intention for this job to happen? If it's God's will, sure, she'll pray a rosary for her husband, of course. And her husband wasn't feeling all that well that day.
He was really sick that morning, and he said, I know I can't take the metro down. Will you drive me down? And I said, sure, I'm happy to do that. And so I sat in the car and went into a deep, prayerful meditation, saying the rosary. And I was really deep in meditation, and all of a sudden I heard this, it's going to be okay. And I went, huh? And the voice said, it's going to be okay. And I said, how do I know I'm not imagining this? And the thought came into my mind, roses. And I looked to my left, and about a half a block away was a garden filled with red rose bushes. And I said, that's really cool, but how do I know that's not a coincidence? And the next thing I knew, some woman stood right next to my car, and her shirt was covered with red roses. And I went, whoa. I went, wow, that's great. So my husband came out, and I told him about it, and he kind of laughed. And then he was called for a second interview, and he said, would you mind driving me again? And I went, sure. So I sat out in the car, and I went into prayer, saying the rosary, and I heard the same voice. It's really going to be okay. And I went, okay. And with that, a truck pulls up right in front of the building where my husband was having the interview. And the truck was a flower delivery truck, and it had roses painted on the side of the truck. It was a white truck, but it had red roses all over the side of the truck. And then and I went, whoa. And then the next thing I knew, a guy pops out of the car with a huge bouquet of red roses in his hand and walks into the building. And I said, great. So I knew that it was all was good with the world. And
did he get the job?
He did get the job, of course. Yes.
Of course he got the job. Just making sure here,
Of course. It was a good job. He had it for many, many years until he retired.
And again, that voice, male, female, just a voice.
It's just a voice.
Yeah. It's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay.
How many times do we hear that in these moments? It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. So often these experiences have something that says it's going to be okay. No matter what it is, it's going to be okay.
Well, I think the thing is, I've often thought, why is all this happening to me? These messages. And I think you have to be open to it. And I think people are told when it's going to be okay more than they realize. But because they're not open to it, they might not hear it. But so I pray the rosary, and at one point I could even pray the rosary in Latin.
Whoa, very impressive.
That's how old I am.
Sister Liz, very impressive. Wow.
And I just pray the rosary just whenever I'm thinking I need to pray the rosary, and that's every day and several times during the day.
You're rooted in this. You're rooted in prayer. You're rooted in rosary. You're not Catholic, but you pray it. You'd be surprised how many Protestants are praying the rosary with us because it works. And Mary isn't just for Catholics. She's for all of us. So much gets lost. That was in the early church. So
Mary, I went through a difficult time after my father died. My mother was an active alcoholic, pretty serious alcoholic. And I prayed to Mary, and because she has always been my mother figure, there's something special there that I'm always being watched over.
I know I just gave a talk last weekend at a parish called Queen of Heaven, and it was basically a Mary talk. And this gentleman came up to my wife afterwards and mentioned that I can't remember what his ailment was he was dealing with, but he just could not get rid of the pain. There was just always pain. It was always debilitating pain. He was always lying down and just in horrible pain. Mm-hmm. So somewhere along the way, but he just said, okay, Mary, I've gone everywhere else. I'm throwing this all at your feet. And the pain went away, and it hasn't been back. And so, that's all we're asking her to do is to take it to Jesus. And as I've mentioned before, when we go to Mary, nothing from Mary going to Jesus can be imperfect. She takes all the ego out. She takes all the me out of it. She takes all my defects out of it. And she delivers a perfect prayer wrapped around her own intentions and other people's intentions. And it ends up being a more powerful prayer than going straight to Jesus. And I know a lot of people don't understand that. I don't understand it. It seems counterintuitive. All I know is that Jesus came to us through Mary. He's asking us to go back to him through Mary. And that's why he sent his mom to Mexico City in their Lady of Guadalupe image, and why he sent his mom to Fatima, and why millions go there, and why he sent his mom to Lourdes. All these apparitions aren't of Jesus; they're of Mary, and it's like an invitation: come to me through my mom. And it's and if you have nothing to base that on, if you don't have that groundwork that was there in the church for 1,500 years, then, and for 2,000 for the rest of us, but if you don't have that groundwork, it doesn't make any sense. All it is true. It's just true. Can't explain it.
It's really reassuring. It's just, I can't put it into words, but you understand, I'm sure. You want to hear another one?
Absolutely.
Okay. I have problems carrying pregnancies to term, and I only did it twice. I missed 2 speeding bullets, so I figured it was time to stop. And I had to be on bed rest because I kept going into preterm labor. And with my younger son, it got really bad, and I was taken to the hospital, and they put me on a drug called magnesium sulfate, and that stops the contractions. So they had me on that for 3 days, and it's a horrible drug. I know that it works miracles and it does what it's supposed to do, but it's a drug where I couldn't even roll over on my own. I had to have roll me back and forth to just, get me comfortable.
Because it relaxes the muscles so much you don't have control over them?
I have no control over anything, and I couldn't even think. And so that was the kind of power that this drug had. It's a horrible drug, but it's also a miraculous drug. So I was on that for 3 days, and they were able to control the labor. I still was kept in the hospital, but all of a sudden my water broke, and I knew things were really rolling now. So they took me into the labor room. My son was born at 34 weeks. But leading up to that, the nurse that was managing my labor contractions wouldn't believe that I was having contractions. And the reason why it wasn't showing up was because my son had flipped and he was now at breech. So the monitors aren't picking up what's actually going on in those cases. I wasn't dilating, and I kept saying, I know I'm in labor. I've done this before. I know what it's like. And I said, please call my doctor. And she said, oh, he's coming in for an emergency, so he'll be here shortly. And I'm thinking, I'm an emergency. So anyway, we saw her once in the course of an hour and a half, maybe twice, but it wasn't much. And she wasn't really watching me. And at one point I said to my husband, you need to go find someone now. You need to go find someone now. And he was starting to look for people. There was no one in the hallway. There was no one at the nurse's station. And as it turned out, there had been a shooting in Washington, D.C., and everybody who could went down to assist in the shooting down the emergency room. So he started knocking on doors and going into rooms looking for someone, and finally found a nurse. And he said, I think my wife is in labor, serious labor, and you need to go see her. Well, while he was looking for someone, I felt 3 hard kicks, like a little foot kicking. And on the 3rd kick, my son's foot came through. And I panicked. I absolutely panicked. And I started screaming, and I was asking for help. And I'm just kind of silently talking to my son, just hang in there, you're going to be okay. And
he's coming out the wrong way.
He's coming out the wrong way.
Yeah.
And the cord had prolapsed. So it was just bad news all the way around. So anyway, my husband brought this nurse in, and then she checked me out. She started screaming, and she said, I have a foot, please help, I have a foot. And the next thing I knew, the resident that disappeared on us jumped up on the bed and was pushing the foot and the cord back in. And they raced me down to surgery, and they were kicking tables, they were kicking, doors, they were kicking. My husband got hit in the head with something, and it was just, everybody was yelling, everybody was panicked. So they got me into the surgery room, and they had to start the surgery before I was under anesthesia. And while the doctors were starting the cesarean.
So are you feeling the incision? Are you feeling
Oh,
it?
yeah. It was the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. And the anesthesiologist, who was this beautiful, beautiful woman, she kept saying, breathe in, just breathe in. And I'm sucking in air as, hard as I could to try to get to the anesthesia going, and nothing was working. And, somebody said, can you give me a shot to help with the pain? And they said, we've already done that. And I was screaming because of the pain. I was breathing in as hard as I could.
And they couldn't wait. They could not wait.
They could not wait.
For you to go under completely.
No,
wow.
No, because they had to get him out, because the cord had prolapsed. So and while I'm screaming and trying to breathe, I had a conversation with God, and I said, I know you can show me how to let go. I can't do this anymore. And by let go is letting me die, because I could not handle it anymore.
You wanted to die.
I wanted to die. It was so horrific. I can't even express how bad it was.
I can't imagine. You're right. I can't imagine. Meanwhile, you're telling God, I can't handle this. Take me.
I said, just show me how to let go. I know you can show me how to let go. And I'm having this desperate conversation and just trying to relax my body, even though I was frantic. And I heard this voice. And it was a very calm voice, a very simple voice that said, if you go, who will take care of the baby? And I said, oh, you're right. And with that, I was out. I was completely, the anesthesia took effect.
That's the last thing you remember.
That's the last thing I remember. And I know that I did have a choice at that time. And I know that it was kind of a test, if that's what you want to call it, that I had to make the right choice. And
you always notice how God doesn't yell in any of these things. God's never excited. Jesus never excited. It's always under control.
Yeah. It was very calm, very matter of fact.
Male voice or just a voice or words? What was your sense?
I've thought about that, and I can't put a sex to it. It was just, to me, it was just a voice. And it was almost, I can't really pin a gender to that voice. But it was just so profound. And when I said, oh, it just kind of shocked me into realizing that I wasn't the only one involved here.
Oh yeah, there's the little guy. Oh yeah,
the little guy who I completely forgot about during all that.
Well, you're so wrapped up in the pain of it all and just the horror of it all that it's understandable. It really is. I don't know if you kick yourself now going, how could I only think about myself? But
I do.
Well, but at the same time, it's like. You're almost separated. You're almost separated from the child. It's like they'll take care of the child, but meanwhile, just let me die. But was the kid just totally out of your mind, basically? Well,
he really was for that short time. Yeah, he was completely out of my mind. Before the nurse came in and before the doctor came in, I was having conversations with Will, who's now Will. I was having conversations saying, "You're going to be okay. Just." Calm down, you're going to be okay. And but during that time where they started the cesarean, I really was thinking of myself. And I do feel guilty about it.
Well, all you know is the pain.
Yep.
I get the wanting to kick yourself, but when all you know is the pain being inflicted upon you, it's pretty hard to be in another place. It really is. Mm-hmm. I get why you kick yourself, because now you can look at it rationally and go, well, of course. But in the moment, it's just horrifying.
Yeah. So
all turned out well. Cesarean turned out well. You came out of it. Everything was okay.
Yeah. My son was, as I said, was 6 weeks premature. So there were some problems associated with that. But he's 31 now and has a great job and is smart as can be and funny and wonderful. And yeah, I feel very blessed. Both my kids are truly wonderful, but he came through a lot.
Yeah.
So,
congratulations on that one. Gee,
thank you.
Oh man.
Thanks.
let's pause right about here. Then more with Liz here on Touched by Heaven. Quick Patreon shout out. Thank you, Michael Rind. Appreciate you joining the Patreon family. Could be Rind. I'm going with Rind on this one, Michael. And if it's not right, you should change it. Thanks for joining the Patreon family to make this all go. And we need that. We really do. There is another website I don't talk about all that much. In fact, I haven't talked about it in ages, called TrapperJackSpeaks.com. TrapperJackSpeaks.com has to do with, it was a few years back when I got the nudge. I was supposed to be speaking in churches, conferences, wherever, wherever. And share these kinds of stories, what God is doing in the world today, this Touched by Heaven stuff, these flare gun moments of God in big worldly ways and smaller ways. But anyway, I stumbled upon a speaking course, not just about, how to talk gooder. No, it was about the business itself, how to run a speaking business. It's a business. But the cost was, at the time, it was just prohibitive. It was just like, we just didn't have any extra anything. And so I thought, no, somehow I'll figure it out. That night I was speaking, and a woman came up and gave us a check to the penny, the exact amount of the course, to the penny. And it was like, whoa. I guess, in other words, God's saying, I'll pay for it, just do it. Because this is what he wants me to do. He wants me speaking out there on podcasts, sure, but also out there, in person, wherever there may be, in whatever church or conference or whatever. So I just want you to ponder the organizations you're part of, the church you're part of, where you go, what you're part of, your sphere of influence or quasi-influence or just participation. And if I would fit in there somewhere, and it would be kind of cool to get me there, and if that makes sense for this guy from Cleveland to go to where you are, then go to TrapperJackSpeaks.com, and there's a little inquiry thing, and we can, talk. We'll talk. There's also a video there, a little sample of some of what I do, but I love customizing, and that's what's kind of come in handy lately. It's just I just love customizing, meaning someone says, we need to talk on X, and I go, oh, cool. Pray about it. It's amazing where God leads, and it works. It works. So whatever the topic, whatever, TrapperJackSpeaks.com. Click around. You'll see the testimonials. You'll see a video of what I do. You'll see whatever you need to see. Okay? It's there at TrapperJackSpeaks.com. All right. Let's get back to Liz here on Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. Where to next?
Well, I'm going to tell you about when my father died. And my father, he died in 1990, and he was the rock of my life. He was really, I could do no wrong in his eyes, so he was kind of blinded by that, but he was just truly a special person in my life, given also the fact that my mother was having alcohol problems. He was my rock. And the day that he died, it was late in the afternoon, and my mother said, just, try to sleep tonight, come in the morning, and, just try to sleep. So I did, and I couldn't sleep, so I got up at 4 a.m. and started heading home to New Jersey. And on the highway, I was crying so hard. I mean, just so blinding tears, just crying so hard. And I started to pray, and I said, God, you got to help me get some control of myself, because I'm going to have an accident, and I can't have an accident today. So I pulled off on one of those, I don't know if you're familiar with 95, but between Washington and the Delaware Memorial Bridge, there are these rest stops that it's in between going north and going south, and you can get gas, there are restrooms, you can get something, restaurants and that kind of thing. So I pulled in, and by this time I got up at 4, I left at 5, and this was about maybe 5:30. And I went into one of the restrooms at one of these places, and I happened to notice there was a guy on a phone right there by the door. And I went into the bathroom and kind of cleaned myself up and tried to compose myself. And then on the way out, this guy who was on the phone told whomever he was speaking to that he had to take care of something, and he'll talk to him later. And he started following me out the door. And I thought, oh man, this is not what I need today, is have some guy following me or harassing me. And he said, I can't let you get in the car in this condition. And I said, I'm fine. I'm just fine. And he said, no, you need to kind of talk to me for a little while, compose yourself, and then you can go. He said, I'll tell you what, I'll sit on the curb. You can crack your window, lock the door, but I'm just going to talk to you. So I talked to him for a while and told him what happened. And he said, and eventually I started to feel okay. And I said, I think I'm okay to get back on the highway. And he said, well, good. I'm in this truck over here, which was a white, completely unmarked 18-wheeler. And he said, I will just kind of stay behind you. And if you need me, just pull over and, we can talk again. And I said, okay, thank you. And I got back on the road and we got on the highway. And apparently this guy had radioed up to all the trucks on the highway so that when I was coming, they would pull over to the far right lane and all of them flashed their lights at me and tooted their horns. So I was being guided by all these trucks on 95. And I looked back pretty soon after I got onto the highway and the truck was gone. I didn't see it. So it just made me feel like I was just being cared for by God. And the thing I forgot to mention was this guy was wearing a pink polo shirt and khakis. And for years and years, I thought, that's kind of what my dad would have worn. So maybe it was just, I was convinced it was an angel. This guy was an angel. But I think he dressed in a manner that made me trust him more because he dressed kind of like what my father would wear. And yesterday, I went onto a website and I wrote it down. It was called It's All About Worship. And there's a section on there called The Symbolism of Colors. And just yesterday, I looked this up, and I looked up the symbol of pink. And the symbol of pink, and I wrote it down, is Heavenly Father's care. That's what pink stands for.
How perfect. Wow. And wow, that's very cool. I know, and if you've listened to enough episodes, you know how often these angels appear in which either they're wearing all white or you mentioned an all white 18-wheeler. I don't know how common that is.
No.
Yeah. Wow.
So
and all these other
cool.
trucks. Wow.
It was elation. I felt this feeling of elation when all these, who does this? All these trucks, they were guiding me after he knew I was okay and disappeared. These trucks continued to guide me down until I got to the Delaware Memorial Bridge. So
I've never heard any story quite like that one.
It's neat. It's pretty neat.
That's pretty unique stuff.
Yeah.
At what point was he an angel? Are they all angels? Is it just, what the heck is all that? Just a beautiful sign, obviously a beautiful sign. Wow.
Yeah, it was cool. It was neat.
Yeah, very protected,
really
very protected. Great sign of protection. Okay. You're obviously very connected. You are connected. You have beautiful faith. You're open. You love God. You love those around you. You just, we can all hear it in your voice. So, well, thank you for this, Liz. This was awesome.
Well, thank you. So, I appreciate you giving us a forum to tell people about this. I know it's something I can't keep to myself, that I really do need to share it. So I appreciate you giving us that venue.
Thank you, Liz, and I hope others do use this as a forum. Somebody, obviously, our shepherd, certainly watching over you. As the song was saying, that was playing in my head when I woke up this morning, this one here. There you go. Someone who will watch over me. And he does. My sheep know my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. That just feels like a heaven moment of however all that was connected, that all those truck drivers giving her that feeling of protection and guidance during that time of sorrow. That's just pretty awesome. God's love being showered down on Liz like that so beautifully. In the story of the delivery, My gosh, I'm trying to imagine that. As a guy, I'm trying to imagine this. Someone's cutting into you. It's pretty hard not just to be, someone's cutting into me, just let me die. But the test, Liz, the test that you pass so beautifully is in that moment of that calming voice saying, and who'll take care of the baby. You didn't go to, I don't care, I'm in pain. No, you went to, oh, pass the test. Was it a test? Every day's a test. Doesn't it feel like every day's a test? A loving test, but a test nonetheless. So yeah, a test that you passed beautifully. What about the baby? Who's going to take care of the baby? Oh, boom. And then you went under. That's just, man, what a moment. What a moment. In our first story about her husband looking for the job and hearing that voice on 2 occasions, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. Isn't that always the voice? Isn't that what the voice always tells us? We live in fear, but everything's going to be okay. I've yet to hear a voice say, oh, you're toast. Oh, man, you're toast. Never. Everything is going to be okay. And then the roses. Just again, confirmation. How many times are we given this confirmation of the power of the rosary? And remember, too, the rosary began in the 1200s. That's before there were Protestant faiths. So, as I say, it's not a Catholic thing. It's an everybody thing. It's a believer thing. It's the mother of Jesus Christ. And I just love that whole concept of Jesus, before he was Jesus, as the second person of the Holy Trinity, through whom all things were made, got to make his own mom. So it kind of is fitting that mom has such a role to play throughout salvation history, doesn't it? So that all just makes sense to me. And all the stories, for me, when I started praying the rosary, it was a life changer. It was a huge life changer for me, and continues to be the daily rosary, saying at least a decade, if not a whole rosary. One does tend to lead to the other, and the fact that Liz said she prays multiple rosaries in a day, it's powerful stuff, very powerful stuff. So thank you for your stories, Liz. You have a story? I want to hear your story. What's your encounter story with angels or divine intervention? Prophetic dreams, visions, near-death experiences, big and little God incidents. Every episode just seems to be just a little different than the one before it. And don't forget about TrapperJackSpeaks.com. If you're a conference, again, think about the organizations you're a part of, church you're part of. Does it make sense? TrapperJackSpeaks.com has all the information about what I do and how I'd love to do it for you. All right? If you'd like to support what we do here, well, here's a place to go. This episode 89 at touchedbyheaven.net. There's a Patreon link, or go to patreon.com and search for Trapper Jack. Patreon is Patreon. And thanks to everybody who either is now or ever has supported us, either through Patreon or going through our post office box, which is on the website at touchedbyheaven.net. Thank you so much, and I will see you next week. Give me your story, touchedbyheaven.net, and I'll see you next week here at Touched by Heaven. Everyday encounters with God. I'm Trapper Jack.